I really do love a great interior scene, and I feel the barn subject is an extension on that, but we still do need to look for ways and work out ways to get depth as well, also portraying the light. So let's see how I go. With this subject, the drawing is really quite intensive. So that's why it's important to get some of those big shapes in place, those big lines, positioning some of those girders and uprights to get them really situated in the right spot. Maybe even sometimes just the best spot. There's a kind of a bit of a grey area there. Because quite often I've actually been painting a scene and thought, you know what, the perspective on that building looks too dramatic and it's going to run the eye through the scene. So that's why when I said that, sometimes I will alter the actual true perspective and to make it a little more visually helpful to the painting. So getting those darks in first. Always try and think your shadows or your darks are just primarily French ultramarine, or your blue, your darkest blue could be cobalt, you don't have to use. You may even choose to use Prussian blue. I would highly recommend an ultramarine or French ultramarine to have that in on your palette because it is the warmest. French ultramarine is the darkest, warmest, most powerful of all the blues. And if you're wanting to paint light, we need good shadows. It's a 50-50 balance there. So, and especially going into those depths, I'll want a little bit of the Terra Rosa or light red ochre, that nice warm. Some people may use burnt sienna, but I find burnt sienna is a little cold, even though it's a cold, dark shadow, but I'm still trying to create that level of warmth and depth. And boy, I can almost remember my thought process with that right-hand side. Oh, look at all those lovely stripes and how that light's coming through. I totally got suckered into that area. It was visually too much, I felt, for the scene, but that's something that we're bound to happen because we're always sort of trying to push our concepts, our ideas, our approach that little bit more. So now with this area, I'll be trying to push that doorway area back. So I'm using the atmosphere, the blue, to create and generate that little bit of depth there. So just using a range of brushes here. The one thing I do love with and this one's one of the Eclipse brushes from Rosemary, is that it will remove brush mark. The hog hair will add a certain undulation, and in say foregrounds or areas that I want traction visually, that's what I'll use or keep. But when I want to remove and disassociate the viewer with that area, I'll use the Eclipse brushes. It just helps create that little bit of lovely depth, which I really do like. So, and traditionally I probably would have used the palette knife just to skim off that paint, but these pretty well do the same thing, but they're far more accuracy and far more control. And I think as we progress with our work, that idea of control, especially when things feel out of control, because most paintings, I have to admit, it's almost in your mind, it's almost like a little bit of organised chaos. Things are going at 100 miles an hour. That's why I almost sort of like to think of it as juggling balls. When we start, we have just the one, but as we go further, it's like 2, then 3, then 4, until we end up, our hands and eye and mind are overcome. But that's why we need the practice. We need to practice like juggling. We need practice to be able to get better at it, to cope in those situations. So now I'm bringing a little bit of titanium white and French ultramarine blue and a tiny little touch of the red and yellow, but it's mostly the blue and white on these stripes. See, it's such an enticing thing. See how visually it really does energize the scene. So I can't really blame myself for trying to add this area into this, or more of this area, and try and maximize it. Because once again, the energy that's released for the painting from that area and being in the foreground is only going to improve the feel of depth. So that was my thought process at this stage. Go with it, even though I knew fairly quickly that, oh geez, you know what, how is it? It doesn't feel as if it's translating visually as what I hoped it was going to. So that's something that we try not to get too sort of stuck up on or locked into, but we just need to be aware. That's where it comes back to that juggling. When we're juggling, once again, 50% is catching the ball and 50% is throwing it. So with painting, that does translate through. With 50% is all about the light, 50% is all about the shadow. It comes in with our composition as well. And I think I was probably adding a little bit too much in this area as well. See how that's now starting to pull focus from other areas. So I think that's why it's good to making sure we're stepping back as well. Super, super important. Now that we're getting these little brushes in, we're really starting to wind up. And I think it's once I'd finished the painting, that's when I added the chickens. So that one was really quite a bit of a challenge. Definitely those darks were a real, almost a bit of a nightmare really. Keeping the intensity, but still getting the depth. So the French ultramarine really did play a huge part in it. With that big open door, I felt, you know what, there was something missing visually, narratively. So I thought I'll add a few little chickens in. And also I got in trouble with the composition on that right-hand side, so I've trimmed that down as well. That's part and parcel of how painting goes. Thanks for watching. All the best.